Good morning. Got a little carried away with Jimmy Buffett this morning. All good. Happy Monday, July 28th. Holy cow, where does the month go? First month of the third quarter, gone. Yes, good morning, Rich. Cool. All right, I'm going to jump right in because I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things to talk about today. And these are just real life real estate questions that pop up and are being talked about. Number one is fraud on Facebook. People are hacking accounts and sending messages out, and you just have to be aware of it because you could be a victim of saying something you didn't intend to say and somebody posts for you. I don't remember the exact example we had, but there's definitely fraud going on where people are hacking Facebook accounts and sending out messages that we shouldn't be sending. So just be aware of that. And, it's going to be changing your passwords and doing things like that. So that's number one. Number two, on real life real estate, this one frustrates me to all no get out, but Stellar MLS, which is the biggest MLS that we have in our company, they changed password notifications and I can't log in. And I spent probably, yeah, which is in the middle of a fraud case with $300 with a Venmo thing. Yeah. No, it's real. You got to pay attention and be cognizant. But back to what I was saying. So Stellar, yeah, they've gone to two-step verification, but I've done all that. I know how to do all that, and I cannot log in. It says you're not accessed, which all my education's up to date, everything's proper, but I can't get in. So just be prepared because Stellar's MLS is a critical part of our business. I was going to do a whole class this morning on just how to search MLS and give market updates. So I'm going to do something different because I couldn't get in today. So that's number two, is know that Stellar's got changes. And if you don't log in every day, you're going to have a hard time logging in. And pay attention and call the helpline if you need to and find what you need to do. That's what I'll be doing this morning. So that's very simple, number two. Number three, and we're going to go fast for these today. We're getting bogus offers from agents and consumers on our listings where they're asking for, basically stupid stuff. And I think it's incumbent upon us to, well, number one, we have an obligation to present all written offers. We do not have an obligation to present any unwritten offers. So verbal offers are specifically excluded from our listing agreement on purpose. So if it's a non-written, a verbal offer, we don't have to present it. We can say, please put it in writing. And, we really don't have the obligation or the right to say, put it on this particular contract, but we're going to talk more about that in a minute. So we're getting offers that are just kind of silly, but it's really important that you guys know that we have to present all written offers, whether they make sense or they're low or they're not. And what happens is there's investment seminars that are going on. Yeah, Dick says, request them each at the office and they'll disappear. Yeah, because they don't want to show up. Right. So make sure that we're, number one, presenting all written offers because we have to do that. But if it's a bogus kind of waste of time verbal deal, you don't have to present it. Right. Is a written offer valid without a signature? No. It is absolutely not. What did Chris say? Yeah, the seller has expressly directed for us not to present any verbal offers. Please present it in writing and it will be addressed accordingly. And that's just happening more and more and more as the market's slowing a little bit, but not really, because we're still, look at the hot sheet, we're selling deals every day. Yeah, they want sellers to hold their properties for 7 years while they pay their mortgage. Yeah, all that stuff is going on. But if it's in writing, we have to present it. And then we can't give legal advice. So it's very important that we direct them to a lawyer. And we happen to have a lawyer on staff with Paramount Title that will help us do that. Herlon, can we request that it be written on a FAR bar or an as-is contract only? Yeah, we can request it, but we have to present all written offers. Right? We can counter if we are so fit to, we can counter on the FAR bar or the FAR bar as is. But if they give us a written offer could be something on a napkin, honestly, right? It says it has to be in writing, and then we got it. So yes, you don't have to accept their offer, but you can counter it, and we should counter it, guys. That's just part of the game. All right, number 3. This one's becoming a real concern for me in real life real estate because we've already discussed that 71% of the agents have never had a deal last year. Have there been any changes in the real estate market in the last year? Raise your hand. Yes. Been a lot of changes in the real estate market in the last year, right? So agents that didn't do a deal last year may stumble across a friend who needs to do something this year, and they're submitting an offer and they have no clue what to do. And it's really not fair for us, but we have to play the game. So just understand that when you're dealing with an agent who hasn't done a deal, you're going to have to step up and take control of that transaction. But don't do it in a rude way. You want to do it in a way that is empowering to help them learn. And then, if they really want to grow in the business, tell them to come join our company, and that'd be good for all of us. I'm going to skip around here to the next one. Just a reminder, I'll probably talk about it again tomorrow, but any condo listings you have, we need to update the condo rider. And I know these things slip by our brains, but whatever it is, we have to update the condo rider to give them proper disclosure, because now the big change is instead of 3 days, they have 7 days to review the condo docs, right? The 15 days still stays in place for new condominiums, but instead of a 3-day disclosure right, we have a 7-day disclosure right. And that has to be updated on the condo rider so that when you get an offer, you can put it on the MLS and we can have that right disclosure handled there. Another thing that's popped across my desk lately is this first photo rule. Now, every MLS has their own. Yes, we have to work both sides as we do 95% of the time. Perfect. The first photo rule. Right now, at least in Stellar MLS, and every MLS has their own rules, it's a front elevation, it's a waterfront, or it's an aerial photo. Has to be one of your front 3. So if you guys are submitting photos with something other than that, we're gonna flag it and say no. Autumn, yes. The condo rider used to say a 3-day rescission period. Now it's a 7-day rescission period because there's a lot more documents that have to be provided that are all clearly identified in the condo rider, but now they have time to see it. Yeah, pool shots are not included in the mix. They're going to get flagged, and we do have 24 hours or 48 hours to fix them, so they're going to get flagged. But I'd rather just not put it in there in the first place. Cool. All right, now we're gonna have some fun. So that was just like real life real estate bullshit we have to go through. But I'm going to share my screen now, and I'm going to talk about. And I thank Kathleen for sending me this content because I think it's really good. Okay, so what's coming down the pike right now are new flood disclosure requirements, which are desperately needed. We're still dealing with flood issues and remediated properties and wrong permits that were never pulled and all that stuff we have to mess with. So now, starting October 1st, there'll be more robust requirements for flood disclosures. In addition to the above disclosures, residential sellers must now also disclose if they're aware of damage to the property caused by flooding during their ownership. How many properties are we seeing coming on the market that are just rebuilt and beautiful? You would never know they flooded at all, but they did. So that's called what is it called? A recurring flood episode or something like that. Developer requirements have also been expanded to include disclosures to a prospective buyer or tenant of a residential condo. The developer must disclose if they're aware of damage caused by flooding to the property due to the time the developer owned the property, whether the developer has filed an insurance claim related to flood damage, and whether they've received assistance of flood damage. So that's a big deal for condos too, because a lot of these condos, the first floors are garages and they took 3 or 4 feet of water. Well, when you get salt water taking 3 or 4 feet of space, what happens? You expose the salt water to the steel and the rebar and the concrete, and it can create problems in the future. Another big change in this bill is the addition of language creating the obligation for a residential landlord. This is interesting, to make flood disclosures to prospective tenants. So now if you're a landlord, you have to disclose to the tenant if the house is ever flooded. We never had that before. If the landlord fails to truthfully disclose this information and the tenant suffers a substantial loss or damage to their personal property, then the tenant may terminate the rental agreement within the specified amount of time. Now that's interesting because it's a residential landlord disclosure, because we've had situations, we have 3 offices that we had to rebuild due to flood. And our landlords were nice and gracious and worked with us. So, we're not going to eat the whole burden by ourselves. But this is for residential landlords to say, hey, this house has rented and has flooded. So, if the storm comes again, you're possibly going to get wet. So that's it. All right, number 2. From time to time, we get inspection window issues and buyer who wants 0 inserted. That's just a bad idea, right? You don't want to put in a 0 inspection period because under the as-is contract, they give up all their rights. And that's not what we want our buyers to do, right? As a seller's agent, yeah, great idea. Put a 0 in there and make it a rock solid contract, but make sure they put their deposit up and it's a big one. All right, educate your buyers with the solution below. And if they still insist, get a written waiver in .loop. Solution: in Florida, real estate contracts, the inspection period is a critical window, usually 15 calendar days by default, during which the buyer can inspect the property and, for almost any reason, and then as his contract back out of the contract and receive their deposit back. This period acts as a quote unquote free look, allowing the buyer to change their mind without penalty. We've talked about this for the last couple of Fridays. It's time to switch back to the regular contract, not the as is. Right. So try implementing that more and more and more. You can make the repair limits as small as you want, but at least have something in there that can hold the buyer responsible to sticking with the contract. If you put 0 days for the inspection period, the buyer loses this right entirely. Once the contract is signed, the buyer would immediately be locked in with no opportunity to cancel based on inspection results or simply due to a change of heart. After the inspection period, or if there is none, the contract becomes binding and the buyer's deposit is at risk if they try to back out for any reasons, which is why we want to have a big deposit, right? This is real life real estate, and this stuff is coming across. So these investors are coming through, saying, oh, I'll take the risk, I'll put 0 days, blah, blah, blah. But now as we progress through the real estate cycle, disclosures are becoming more and more and more important. So the seller is going to disclose something the buyer needs to know up front. And that's why we want you to have the disclosures up front and in the MLS, because the contract says delivery to the agent is deemed as good as delivery to the consumer. So that's very important for all of us. Enough comment on that one. I want to get to one more point before we finish up here. As of January 25th of this year, all FHA, USDA, and VA loans require well water testing and septic. Interesting. There's nothing wrong with well water and septic tanks, but a lot of lenders do not like them because they need to be tested and they need to be regularly inspected and they need to be drained and maintained. And a lot of lenders just don't want to deal with that frustration. So as of January this year, all government-sponsored loans will require water testing. FHA and VA loans, these loans always require both well and septic inspections and testing if the property is not connected to public utilities. The systems must meet standard specifics, including distance requirements and water quality testing for contaminants like bacteria, nitrates, and lead. The results must be documented and provided to the lender before closing. So just know if you're selling rural properties, which we're starting to sell a lot more of, because as the inner city markets get more and more expensive, more consumers are going outside. And when they go to the rural areas, there's a lot more well and septic. So just know if you're selling a property on well and septic, which should be denoted in the property disclosure statement, you're going to have to do special tests just for that. And as we move into San Antonio and Brooksville and other places like that, we're going to see more and more of these well and septic issues. So that's that. I've got one point I want to get to here, but I want to keep it in time. Contract clarity on Florida real estate contracts, particularly the commonly used FAR or as-is contract. The balance to close is not typically written as the word balance or left as a generic sum. Instead, it's shown as a specific dollar amount calculated from the breakdown of the purchase price, less deposits, and the amount financed. And here's why: clarity, precision, avoiding ambiguity, contract structure, title companies, and lenders. So let's say that's a $500,000 house and they're going to put $10,000 down and they're going to borrow $350,000. So 350 plus the 10 is 360, 500, that's $140,000 would be the balance to close, not counting closing costs. So a lot of us are just putting balance or TBD, and that's really not appropriate for the purchase and sale contract. We should do the math. It's not hard. I just did it in my head, right? Purchase price minus deposit minus loan equals balance to close, not counting closing costs, because that could be a whole nother issue, and that'd be someplace else in the contract, right? And this one I think is so important right now. 3 non-negotiable communication tactics separate agents who retain listings from those who get replaced. Sorry, guys, I'm here to tell you I've been doing this for 35 years. We're going to be taking listings for 6 months, and some of them are not going to sell. And then they're going to expire, and they're going to relist with another agent because they think you're the problem. Right? And the answer is you're not the problem. They're the problem. But it's going to happen more and more and more. So the way to overcome this are these 3 points. A weekly phone call, not a text or an email. Agents must initiate scheduled, consistent calls every week, covering feedback from showings, including no showings, neighborhood sales activity, updates on leads or offers, and setting seller expectations for next steps. Waiting for the seller to call is a major red flag, leading to agent termination, or disengagement, as the term is called now. All right. So if you're not doing this stuff and keeping your seller abreast, I'm playing this game now with my seller, and he's fully up to date and knows every prospect I'm working on and what status everybody's in, because I talk to him probably 4 times a week, easy. Right. And that's what it's going to take to maintain these relationships, because some of these sellers are going to test the market and see if it works, and some are going to test the market and see that it's not working, and they're not going to take your advice in the short term. And you're going to have to work them down over time. And that's just something we haven't dealt with in years, but it's time to start dealing with it now. Um, Unfiltered buyer feedback. Send buyers showing feedback, which you have through showing time, directly to the seller with no editing or softening. Hearing honest, verbatim comments from buyers validates the agent's advice and reduces defensiveness when discussing price adjustments or repairs. I know some of you don't like sending those hard messages, but when the buyer says, I don't like the roaches on the floor, it's probably something the seller needs to hear. This is pretty cool. And if you're a Zillow Showcase user, it makes it a lot easier. Weekly web traffic reports. Regularly update the seller on online listing engagement, number of views, property saves, and how their listing compares in activity to competitors. This transparency reassures the seller that marketing is ongoing and helps diagnose issues proactively. That's something I think we need to discuss a little bit deeper. Okay, this is recorded, so I'm going to be careful with what I say, but we invest in the MLS and Century 21 to disseminate our listing to the major real estate portals. So there's not a whole lot of marketing that has to be done by us other than writing a proper description, including really good quality photography, and then disseminating it through IDX to all the other websites, and then answering our phone. That's kind of the most important thing. All this other stuff that people talk about, I'm going to put on my website, I'm going to do this. None of that shit matters, because nobody's looking at your website. They're going to Zillow, they're going to realtor.com, right? All we can do is make the listing look attractive and then answer our phone, right? So when sellers feel in the dark, they assume their agent isn't working or doesn't care. Clear, proactive communication builds trust and makes it less likely for clients to fire their agent mid-listing. In short, in today's challenging market, communication isn't optional. It's the single most decisive factor in whether a seller sticks with their agent. And here's the challenge. You've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again. A listing is an unsecured loan that's only repaid if you sell the property. So you're going to sink in hundreds of dollars in photographs, hundreds of dollars in Zillow showcases, hundreds of dollars in time and money and interest and driving through and putting signs and putting lockboxes and all that stuff. And you're not going to get prepaid if you lose that listing. And this is not a market we've had to deal with in a long time. So I think it's really relevant right now. There's one thing I want to get to, and I don't have permission from the agent to share this, but I think he'll be okay with it. Oh, where is it? Where is it? Project management platforms such as MoxieWorks, Asana, Monday.com, Basecamp, organize updates, blah, blah, blah. Client lifecycle CRM like Moxie's allow you to manage everything from leads to meetings and invoicing while facilitating direct communications. We're going to get to that. Automated updated software, proven strategies. Define updated frequency and ownership. Decide how often clients need updates, weekly, bi-weekly, project milestone based, and designate who's responsible for each communication. Some sellers don't want you to call them. They want to call you and get an answer. This is the one. Personalize each update. Use the information from CRMs and conversation intelligence to reference recent interactions, client preferences, or ongoing issues. And this is how I'm going to close today. And I'm going to brag on Kevin Friel, who is an agent who has actually been in the business longer than me, not many years more, but longer than me. And he does such a good job of talking about his properties. Promotions, this Kevin. Wrong email? No. I had it all queued up. Maybe it's in my training folder. No, not there. This is not the right one. Where the hell is it? Give me a second. I thought it was my promotions tab. Oh, maybe this is the one. This is such a great example of when I was showing the other email about being concise with your marketing message. Kevin's does such an amazing job. I get these emails and I read every one of them, and they're just interesting. So, and he makes them interesting and he writes really, really well, right? Hello, friends. On June 25th, 1985, at just 19 years old, I received my real estate license, officially launching a journey that would grow into a 40-year career helping families build wealth through homeownership. What a powerful statement that is, right? 40 years of helping people build wealth through homeownership. Isn't that what we really do? Right? Choosing real estate over finance early on, I knew I wanted to help people with their investments. I considered becoming a financial advisor as I believed in the value of saving, hard work, and preparing for retirement. But it was seeing the impact realtors had, many of them parents of my friends, that led me to real estate. I saw the opportunity not just to help people buy homes, but to invest in their futures. What a passion. Taking the first step in Dunedin, my first interview was with Merrill Lynch Realty in Dunedin, where Ginger McQuigg, who's still around, took a chance on me. I had gone to school with her children, and she saw something in me I will always be grateful for. At 19, I was the youngest agent in the office, and it was a difficult time. No internet, no smartphones, no fax machines, just relationships, hard work, and trust. Building a foundation in the industry. In 1986, I earned Rookie of the Year, an award that still holds a special place in my heart. After nearly 5 years at Merrill Lynch, I joined Remax Mutual, where I spent the next 12 years learning, growing, and laying the foundation of what it means to be a full-time professional in this industry. Right? What a story. Embracing new challenges in South Tampa. In 2001, I took a leap of faith and I joined a smaller boutique brokerage called List Realty, which is where List with Beggins comes from, right? LIST is an acronym for Landed in South Tampa because John Lum was a pilot for Air Canada and he landed in South Tampa. That's where List came from. So List with Beggins just became a joke because it sounded cute. List Realty in Hyde Park, moving into a different part of Tampa Bay. It was like starting over, new neighborhoods, new schools, completely new vibe. It was a challenge, but one that helped me grow personally and professionally. I began selling historic bungalows and the new townhomes, and soon after we merged with Century 21 Beggins. an incredible family-run company with over 50 agents and over 500 agents now, right? Uh, Relations that span generations. What means the most to me after all these years are the relationships I've built, many of them spanning 3 generations and dozens of transactions. I'm deeply grateful to every client who has trusted me with such an important part of their life, right? Looking ahead with gratitude, here's to 40 incredible years and to at least 10 more, helping families find their place in this beautiful community we call home. Ready to buy or sell, let's talk. And then he does a video of him speaking through this too, right? So that goes back to where I was here with Kathleen's note. Personalization and clarity are key. I mean, Kevin is really talented at doing that. He's a very well-spoken, very intellectual person, and he did a great job making that message. I thought it was great. All of his messages. He'll tell me a story, not me. He'll write a story about the home that he helped this customer find. They've been looking for years and all this stuff, and their kids had these problems and all this stuff, and he solved them all and got them into the home, and they had some challenges through their financing, and he fixed all those, and he just really told a story. So I thought this was like really cool when I saw personalization and clarity are key. Make sure your updates are timely, tailored, and actionable. And that's really not tailored. That went to his entire database, of which I'm a part of. But I read every one of them because he's so well spoken. So as you think about the messages you send, think about things like that. And if you want to, call Kevin or text him or email him and ask him to put you on his mailing list because he really does a fantastic job. So I wanted to call that out as real life real estate for Monday, July 28th. Oh my goodness. Look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you, Rich. I'm glad you like that. Yep. Perfect. It's a good example. So really call Kevin and or email him or text him and say, can you add me to your mailing list? I'm going to read what you write because he's really good at it. Cool. That's all I got for today. Happy Monday, real estate, real life real estate. And you got it. Happy Monday.